Congruent figures. What does the word congruent means? Congruent means something that is identical, that has same shape as well as the same size. Basically, everything is the same. Basically, identical twins, all right? That means if you look at these two shapes, right? These two shapes are both what? Hexagons, right? I'm sorry, pentagons, 5 sides. And if they're the same shape, let's see if they have the same size. If they do, our angles have to be identical. So I have to have congruent angles. For instance, the angle A has to be congruent or identical to angle G. The same thing goes for angle B. That has to be congruent or identical to angle H. Angle C has to be the same as angle I. Then we have two more angles. One angle D has to be congruent to angle J. And our angle E has to be congruent to the angle K. The same thing has to go for the sides. The side measures also have to be congruent. If these two shapes are identical, the angles as well as the corresponding sides have to be congruent. Corresponding sides, let's look at these. My side, AB, has to be congruent to the side GH. Side BC has to be congruent or the same side measure as the side HI. The side CD has to be congruent to the side and the other shape that is IJ. Those are corresponding, right, sides. And side ED has to be congruent to its corresponding side JK. And we have one more side, right, in there, that is the E and A, or AE, that has to be congruent, the same as the side KG. If all of these are congruent, then we have congruent, identical figures. Sometimes we can rotate these figures. However, you have to be very careful. You have to be like little ninjas, right, to find your congruent sides. If you look, we have an example in here. And we're supposed to say, tell if these two triangles are congruent. Tell if these two figures are congruent. Well, we need to find sides that are alike, that are the same length, right? So let's look. The one triangle on the left has a height, right, that is 4 units. Well, the triangle on the right, it looks to me that this triangle is on the left just got a little turned. So the height that is over here is the height that's over here, right, and the other one. Those two sides are congruent. They have the same measure, right? Those two are corresponding. That triangle just only turned. All right. Then we have the other side that measures 3 units is congruent to the side as this way, that's 3 units. And then we have our hypotenuse, that's 5, which is congruent to the other hypotenuse that is 5. That means these two triangles actually are congruent, right? Same sizes. Let's look at these rectangles. If I look and I'm trying to find corresponding sides and have to tell if these two rectangles are congruent, let's look at the kind of a width, right, which is 2 on the smaller one. If I look at the other rectangle which got turned, do I see 2 anywhere? I really do not, right? So that means those two figures are not congruent. They do not share same size measures. It also can be if we are looking at a shape, such as this one in here, my pentagon. And I can look if my angle measures are the same, right? If the angle measures are the same, then we have a congruent figure. So if I look, this angle in here is actually congruent to that angle, right? The one on top is the same measure as the other one on top. Those are congruent. Or my angles that are on the right-hand side, they're identical as well, same measures. Oh my goodness, well let's see, let's keep on going. This one over here, bottom right, same measure as the one over there on the bottom right. And these, the last two, also have the same measures. So these angles are identical, so these figures are congruent. And if you also look, their sides are congruent. They have the same side measures. These two figures, yes, are congruent. And that's all true congruency.